It is with my great delight that I ask Skye Glenday, the Chief Executive Officer from Climate Friendly, to join and speak to you all this morning. Climate Friendly is a profit-for-purpose organisation that has delivered over 20 million tonnes of carbon abatement by the end of 2020, and with plans to scale up to 100 million tonnes by the end of 2025. So please join me in welcoming Skye to the stage, who will be discussing the emerging carbon economy.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to share some insights on Australia's emerging carbon market and the intersection with agriculture, technology and sustainable, or indeed circular, production, as we just heard about. Firstly, I too would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, the Wiradjuri people, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend my respect to all First Nations people here with us today. As researchers, policymakers and businesses engaged in the agricultural sector, I don't need to convince you about Australia's huge opportunity to continue to be a leader in cost-competitive, sustainable agriculture globally, achieved through a combination of innovative technologies and data-driven land management practices. This is Food Agility CRC's mission, and we've heard about many aspects of this opportunity over the course of the conference. What I would like to share is some thoughts on how carbon farming could be better integrated into agricultural practices. I believe that better integration can deliver a threefold opportunity: increasing agricultural productivity and production of sufficient nutritious food for our growing global population, drawing down carbon from the atmosphere to help tackle the climate challenge, and expanding biodiverse habitat through the landscape and property level planning. You will hear the word integration many times throughout the next 15 minutes or so, as this is the key to unlocking carbon farming, an integrated package of land management activities rather than a standalone carbon economy. Right now, there are around 800 registered land-based carbon farming projects in Australia. This means that just 1% of agricultural properties are currently participating in the carbon market. This means there's potential for a step change in adoption of carbon farming through better integration into sustainable agricultural systems. Before I dive into the details of that carbon farming opportunity and how we can make it easier to participate, I'd like to share a little bit about myself and Climate Friendly. As Sam mentioned, I'm currently co-CEO of Climate Friendly. I'm also a director of the Carbon Market Institute, which is the Australian carbon sector's independent industry association. However, I first got my taste for the nascent carbon farming industry when I joined the newly established Australian Government Department of Climate Change in 2007. For me, this was a dream position, as I'd always had a passion for nature and the land. Though I grew up on Gadigal country in Western Sydney, my mum's family came from Cobar and the Burragorang Valley, and my dad's from the Queensland Granite Belt and Blackwater. I had the privilege of working in the government through the original design of the Carbon Farming Initiative. I also got to work internationally on global accounting frameworks for the land-based carbon sector, and to implement early pilots of carbon farming projects with the Indonesian government as both a government employee and later within the research sector. I then leapt at the chance to join Climate Friendly and build on this policy and research experience to work with agricultural producers in Australia and translate the theory into practice. Climate Friendly was founded 19 years ago by a CSIRO scientist with the goal of providing extension services to support agricultural producers, foresters, traditional custodians to achieve a productive, sustainable land sector that contributes to a net zero emission Australia by 2050. As Sam mentioned, we have early runs on the board. Working in partnership with land managers around Australia, we met our first target to deliver 20 million tonnes of carbon abatement at the end of 2020. And we are now working to scale this up to achieve an ambitious goal of 100 million tonnes by 2025. Since the Carbon Farming Initiative was first introduced nearly 10 years ago, we've helped land managers to establish over 140 new projects covering 10 million hectares of land, a third of these in partnership with the traditional custodians of the land. Each project involves around 12 people in Climate Friendly with unique skills and expertise to support our carbon farming partners, all the way from project feasibility, governance and structure, audits, through to carbon credit issuance and trading. As we heard on the last panel, complex problems and projects need skilled interdisciplinary partners, and that's what we bring. While the work of our team and our partners on the ground and others involved in the carbon farming sector is a good start, we collectively have a long way to go to unlock participation for the 99% of land managers who have yet to begin their own carbon farming projects. So how do we seize this opportunity and make it easier for agricultural producers to participate in the carbon economy? There is a wide and growing menu of options for land managers to get involved in carbon or environmental services market. This includes 16 agricultural or vegetation methods under the Emissions Reduction Fund, climate active or other emerging carbon neutrality standards, a variety of government biodiversity programs such as the Australian Government C+B pilot, the New South Wales Biodiversity Conservation Trust, the Land Restoration Fund in Queensland, or other standards such as Accounting for Nature. There's a growing range of sectoral targets such as MLA's carbon neutral by 2030 for the red meat industry, and numerous grant opportunities for plantings or soil tests. The list goes on. The growing set of opportunities signals an increasing move to more sustainable land management practices. However, the menu of options is also incredibly complicated for individual producers and even large agribusiness to navigate. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. In addition, each opportunity comes with its own set of technical rules and eligibility criteria and consequent transaction costs associated with implementation, compliance, and audit. Programs are often regulated by different government agencies or different levels of government or sometimes private standards. This means that even finding the right paperwork and managing the administrative load is a heavy burden, requiring a multitude of skills, let alone the actual activity design and implementation in the paddock. Further, each opportunity, project or program tends to relate to a single activity. For each activity, like a planting of native species as a shelter belt, or a shifting to rotational grazing to improve soil carbon, you need a separately registered project and end up duplicating a lot of the management and compliance requirements. While the focus on a single activity makes sense from a scientific accounting perspective, this is typically not well aligned with the reality that agriculture, soil, water, vegetation, and other natural capital exists in a set of connected systems, which are managed holistically by the farmer or land manager. For example, rotational grazing done well can not only improve soil health, but also result in improved live weight gain and promote regeneration of vegetation to deliver important habitat for biodiverse species and shade for livestock. A single activity, single project approach also commonly means that projects do not meet commercial viability thresholds, limiting uptake. Agricultural producers typically manage their farm holistically, commonly with mixed farming enterprises producing a range of agricultural products. So why should carbon methods be one-dimensional? The good news is that a new generation of carbon farming method is on its way. The integrated carbon farming method is currently under development and will enable multiple carbon storage activities under a single project. Climate Friendly has been working since early 2019 with researchers, government, carbon, agricultural, technology, resources, and conservation organisations, as well as directly with farmers and traditional owner groups, to develop and pilot this new integrated farming method. The method is in a co-design process with the government, industry, and research, and is due to be finalised and available for use in early 2023. Enabling land managers to implement multiple carbon storage activities under a single project will dramatically improve the financial viability of carbon farming. Further, it will make it easier to adapt and adopt a property-specific approach across the full diversity of Australian landscapes, agricultural practices, and ecosystems. This is not a one-size-fits-all program. We know it does not work for agricultural production. Each producer will have the flexibility to select the right package of activities that align with their biophysical potential, property management goals, and landscape connectivity, along with their business, legal structure, or family circumstances. This integrated carbon farming method has the potential to make high-quality carbon farming projects available to thousands of land managers, and estimates are that it could enable up to 2.5 billion tonnes of carbon abatement in Australia over the next 10 years. In order to build in a degree of future-proofing, the integrated farm method is being designed in a modular manner. New technologies or management practices can be plugged in when ready. In future updates, this could include not only land-based carbon storage activities, but also farm electrification and renewable energy production. This could be further expanded and also include the integration of natural capital accounting. This more streamlined approach is probably the single most important thing that we can do in the intermediate term to make it easier for farmers to participate in the carbon economy. Making carbon farming viable for a whole new cohort of land managers. It is also needed so that companies like AOCO, who are already looking at the breadth of carbon and natural capital opportunities that apply to their land, can take steps within a credible, accountable and valuating framework to improve their productivity and reduce greenhouse gases and generate environmental benefits. We will hear more on this from Naomi later in the panel. While it will not remove all the complexity and diversity of carbon farming in one hit, the integrated farm method represents a major advance in the management of carbon farming projects in Australia. As the integrated farm method comes online, how can we ensure that implementation is optimised and verify that it has high integrity for the long term? The method must be supported by a national integrated data sharing platform. We heard quite a bit about this topic yesterday. You may have seen questions raised about integrity of some carbon farming methods over recent months. When these claims are examined more closely, the heart of the issue is in fact about data availability, quality and consistency across property, regional and national scales. Firstly, you might ask why integrated data? Well, carbon farming activities like agriculture and ecological systems involve multi-dimensional factors. For example, weather, climate, management practice, biophysical potential, driven by different soil types, water availability, and many other factors. Examining soil samples or vegetation maps without knowledge of these other factors is of limited utility. In order to optimise carbon storage, agricultural productivity and natural capital over time, we must have integrated data sets. Right now, relevant data is often siloed based on data type. We've made some progress towards integration. For example, the Terrestrial Ecosystems Research Network, or TERN, was first launched in 2009 as a research collaboration, and it contains a growing library of ecological data. Separately, the Australian Government recently announced a national soil database, which contains carbon content and other soil test results. The NLIS, or the National Livestock Identification System, contains important livestock tracing information relating to cattle, sheep and goats, albeit with some important productivity information not yet incorporated in that system. Other data-driven initiatives are emerging, which all make valuable contributions within their defined scope or scientific field. But not only is data often siloed by type, also by organisation. There is a wealth of agricultural and environmental data held by disparate public, private and private sector entities, agricultural organisations, research bodies and even land managers. Currently, Climate Friendly is a part of this segmented data landscape. With over 140 carbon farming projects that we support, we are a data-rich organisation. While Climate Friendly and our project partners contribute to a number of research partnerships, it is complex to share the volume of data that we collect in the absence of a national database. For example, project data includes over 1 billion pixels of UAV and LiDAR data per year, processed into 3D models with vegetation height, canopy cover and density. Satellite data calibrated at property scale across our 10 million hectare project portfolio to track regeneration and pasture biomass. Soil carbon samples at depth, property management data, including livestock information, infrastructure improvements, such as water points and fencing. All of these data sets are collected in a time series of information, starting from 10 years before project commencement, and then frequently as quarterly throughout the 25-year project life cycle. If that is the data contribution from our carbon farming projects alone, imagine the wealth of information the universities, government agencies, technology, agricultural institutes and other carbon farming project service providers, as well as individual land managers in this room could collectively contribute. Fragmented data is a handbrake on our opportunity. If more comprehensively integrated, these data sets could enable a step change in our collective understanding of management practices, agricultural productivity, sustainability impact from both a carbon and natural capital perspective. So what else do we gain from a national integrated database covering all facets of the land sector? Yesterday, we heard about the benefits for productivity gains and benchmarking for producers. Having integrated data also allows us to understand the benefits or trade-offs between productivity, carbon, and natural capital. This supports landscape planning and optimised participation in an integrated farm method. Sharing big data drives down costs and supports increased evidence-based land management. For example, one of the biggest transaction costs in participating in carbon farming is the on-ground measurement costs. Increasingly, that means we use systems like Flint Pro, which Rob Delight will talk about shortly, to model carbon production and natural capital benefits in periods between measurement intervals. The more calibration data, the better the model. With better models, we can reduce the measurement sampling or intervals, but maintain project integrity. Secondly, we currently have different precision of data at national, regional, and property scales. This can lead to misunderstandings and policy or operational translation issues because the different scales of data lead to different conclusions. For example, some of the recent commentary on carbon market integrity originates from this issue. National data sets are being used to assess whether carbon projects are delivering impact on specific properties. These data sets are different to the data sets used by the carbon projects. For example, as described earlier, Climate Friendly collects extensive property-specific information and calibrates data sets specifically for its project portfolio. By comparison, some of the national spatial data sets are currently calibrated with just a few thousand ground points, and management information is not incorporated. The differences can be significant. For example, imagine a map of your property or region which showed only sealed roads compared with all the unsealed access routes. Limited information means limited insights and ultimately limited opportunity. If data is shared using the latest technology with all the appropriate privacy protections, as we heard about yesterday, we can improve consistency in data sets and therefore deliver greater transparency and ensure our carbon, agricultural, and natural capital sectors are duly credited for their high integrity. Beyond the data management technology, I'd like to turn to another big integration concept, emerging technology more broadly. The agricultural sector still accounts for 15% of Australia's national carbon emissions. An integrated farm method coupled with integrated data will enable a step change in carbon farming projects. But there remain some currently unavoidable emissions from agricultural production. New technology, some of which is on showcase here today, provides an answer to this problem. For example, Guy Webb will shortly talk about the work of Loam Bio, who are applying microbiology smarts to get the bugs quite literally into the soil. Livestock additives are another technology frontier, whether through legumes or other solutions such as Asparagopsis or 3-Not. These have made leaps and bounds in the feedlot context, and work is underway to expand these technologies to the grazing herd. While these technology advances are impressive, we need to ensure that they can plug in to our modular integrated farm method and data management systems as they become available. Historically, incorporation of new technology into carbon farming has been problematic. For example, soil carbon methods have been prescriptive on permitted soil measurement technologies requiring physical sampling. Emergent technologies to soil measurement, such as LiDAR or similar approaches, should be able to be utilised and plugged in to the integrated farm method as they are proven. Beyond technology, there is one further important integration, which we heard a lot about at dinner last night. The integration of First Nations knowledge with emerging science, technology, and agricultural practices. There is much we can learn from our First Nations partners and their 80,000 odd years of sustainable land management. I mentioned earlier that 1/3 of the projects that Climate Friendly supports involve traditional owner partners. We've seen firsthand through these projects the benefits for both the agricultural producers and the traditional custodian partners, who have a shared passion for healthy country and thriving regional communities. Collaboration on a carbon farming project is based on their shared love of where they are, and it's breaking down some of the barriers about the who, a valuable paradigm that we heard about from Professor Stan Grant last night. So finally, in turning to the new government and how can it support this step change and make it easier for agricultural producers to participate in carbon farming. Integration, connectivity and partnership should be the anthem of the new government. And from media this morning, it seems that that's emerging as their rhetoric. We are lucky that carbon farming has long had bipartisan support. However, with the Albanese government's commitment to a 43% emissions reduction target by 2030, we have an opportunity for a step change and to grow our collective ambition for a sustainable, thriving regional Australia. There is an important opportunity for the 47th Parliament to work in an integrated way across foundational high priority policies which have multi-party and broad community support. The newly appointed ministers for climate change and energy, environment and water, agriculture, fisheries, forestry and Indigenous Australians must all work together to support and engage the breadth of our rural, regional and remote communities and deliver an integrated approach that works on the ground rather than operating in silos in their respective portfolios. If we work together in the next phase of this transition to a net zero economy, the opportunity is enormous. On the climate change front, Australia has huge potential to draw down carbon in our vegetation and soils. Estimates by the World Resources Institute and Nature Conservancy indicate that regenerating landscapes globally has the potential to absorb 8.9 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere every year through to 2050, while still maintaining native grasslands and current levels of food production. Translating this into a more local opportunity, increasing vegetation cover by 10% in New South Wales alone has the potential to draw down, on average, 75 million tonnes of carbon over the next 20 years. On soil, the opportunity is similarly large. The University of Sydney has estimated that globally we have potential to store between 1 to 3 billion tonnes of soil carbon annually. This equates to about 50 million tonnes per year in Australia. If well integrated, regenerating our land and improving soil health can not only deliver carbon storage, but can reverse the current rapid biodiversity loss and improve agricultural productivity. This will in turn support thriving regional communities, healthy people living on healthy land. As we work towards a net zero world by 2050, the World Resources Institute has estimated that food production globally needs to be increased by as much as 60% to feed the growing population. Integrated carbon farming represents a huge opportunity to position Australia as a preferred supplier for sustainable or circular produce globally. If we can achieve integrated data and a system that allows technology innovations to plug into carbon farming projects, the potential for positive change in the agricultural sector is enormous.